My name is Cassius Jones. I'm the head of national accounts and customer success here at Smarking. It's a pleasure to present to you today. Just a quick agenda of what I plan to get through. I've got a brief deck prepared to share with you a little bit more information about who we are at Smarking, who we help, and how we do it. I'll walk you through some of the services and the products that we offer. We've got a business intelligence application and a demand-based pricing engine that we call automated yield management. We think both are relevant to commercial real estate owners, especially in this post-COVID-19 world. I've got a brief case study about some of the work that we've been doing with Unico Properties, commercial real estate owner based out of Seattle, Washington. And then I'm gonna poke around the software a little bit and let you know what things look like live and in person. Throughout this demonstration, I want to sprinkle in some insights that we've been gathering around how parking and transaction volumes have been trending in this peculiar post-COVID-19 world that we find ourselves in. We work with over 2,000 locations nationally, so we're seeing some interesting trends in markets like Miami, Houston, and Austin that have been a little bit sooner to open up. I'm hopeful that some of these insights and data that I can share with you will be relevant to your business. So with that, I'll get going. Who are we at Smarking? What exactly do we do? We build business intelligence and yield management software for people who own and manage big portfolios of parking assets. Typically, we allocate clients into three verticals. So we do a tremendous amount of work with cities like the city of Santa Monica, Houston, Texas, the Miami Parking Authority. And then on the private side, obviously, big owners of commercial real estate assets, Brookfield Properties, Hines, Tishman Speyer, Boston Properties. We also do work with parking operations companies like ABM and Premier Parking. The common denominator across all of these verticals is that they've got lots of different parking assets, and typically they've got different systems in place in order to control access to their inventory and process payment. What Smarking has done is build cutting-edge business intelligence and yield management technology that integrates all of the data from these various parking systems and brings it into one holistic software application. The value propositions are really fourfold. So parking is largely a manual business still. It escaped the technological innovation that we've seen happen in other industries over the last 20 years. A lot of what our software does is just automate sort of manual tasks. We're talking about physical car counting, manual Excel creation. So we're bringing business automation tools in order to lower the expenses associated with running a parking operation. Typically, labor is the largest line item in an expense report for a parking operation. We're trying to keep that low, especially in a post-COVID-19 world. If you've ramped down staffing, how do we keep it low? How do we make your operations lean and nimble moving forward? Business intelligence to make better business decisions, whether it's tenant level insights or insights into specific rates. Our software can parse all those things out for you. And then really yield management is something that's taken more and more of our time in helping clients with these days. How do we use this data in order to make pricing and inventory allocation decisions designed to increase revenues? It's not uncommon in the parking industry for folks to think about changing their rates maybe once a year. If you're on the cutting edge, you might think about doing things quarterly. The reality is that there's much more pricing opportunities inside of your parking assets. A lot of owners just don't have the necessary transparency into their operations in order to uncover those opportunities. Really, where does Smarking see parking going as a real estate asset? Ultimately, we believe that parking will be digitized, similar to the way that the airline and hotel industries function today, where there's a tremendous amount of price transparency and prices fluctuate on a kind of per second basis. Currently, right, the parking market is massively inefficient, and we believe that digitization tools like business intelligence and yield management are critical to building the sort of digital infrastructure that's going to be required in order for things like dynamic pricing and price transparency communicated directly to vehicles to happen. So you might be asking yourself, okay, well, parking, why do I need this? What is it about parking business intelligence and dynamic pricing that's relevant to me? In a typical urban real estate asset, 5 to 10% of the net operating income associated with that property is going to come off of the parking component. But commercial real estate owners really lack the tools that are needed in order to effectively manage that. So there's sort of no transparency into basic metrics for necessary parking management. I viewed some of these reports, you'll get a peak occupancy that'll be representative of sort of one day in the month. Well, what happened overnight? What happened on weekends? There's a lot of sort of just basic blocking and tackling here that our software gives you the tools to do. Data is sort of critical to decision-making. Here we are in 2020. That's not news to anyone. But if you ask a typical commercial real estate owner, they're going to have no access to the data that they need. As a result, labor costs are often bloated and unchecked. That means we're doing things sort of counting cars or manually compiling spreadsheets. It's inefficient and it's costly. And then if you are a real estate owner and you are trying to make a decision based on parking, you're oftentimes going to rely on the parking operator reports that you get on a monthly basis. My understanding is that these things hit your inbox maybe 15, 20 days after the fact, and often lack the detail and granularity that's necessary in order to understand what the dynamics are in your facility and where you have opportunities to improve performance. You can't manage what you don't measure, and Smarking gives you the information and the data that you need on a timely basis so that you can better manage your asset. Very, very similar to a lot of what the software that's been being built to handle sort of like the leasing side of your business from an optimization perspective. Really, Smarking's not doing anything sort of like new or crazy, just applying that tried and true playbook to an unloved segment of your portfolio. So like I said, we're going to automate processes. We're going to put daily emails, automated alerts right into your inbox to help save you time and keep your expenses low. A lot of real estate owners have ramped down staffing as a result of post-COVID-19, and we're going to help keep expenses that way. Key insights into revenue, duration, and occupancy at a tenant level are going to help you make better business decisions. A lot of clients right now currently grappling with how much space they have for monthly parkers. Because of the pandemic and some of the fear of mass transit, we believe that inventory allocation amongst your tenants is going to be critical in the coming months, and we're helping clients think through that. Last but not least, right, really leveraging the data in order to make more informed pricing decisions and inventory allocation decisions designed to increase revenues. That's the business intelligence tool. About 2 years ago, we introduced the industry's first dynamic pricing engine for parking. We call it AIM, or Automated Yield Management. AIM is a fully automatic software solution. It's effectively an algorithm that reads all of the wonderful data that we have in the business intelligence application, automatically calculates what the best price is, and goes ahead and pushes it to participating channels. We've got a graph on the screen here. You can basically see sort of the simulation around, or excuse me, this is an actual results around what happened when we deployed our dynamic pricing engine at a commercial garage in Boston, Massachusetts. More than a 200% increase in revenues you can see almost immediately after the dynamic pricing engine was implemented. It's not uncommon for us to be able to add between $50,000 and $200,000 in revenue on a per facility basis. Some of our best markets probably intuitively make sense. We do great work in Boston, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, those type of markets where demand is evolving and varied. Why should you go with Smarking? We've got unparalleled service and dedicated staff to help you better understand what this data means and how it can improve your business. We're compatible with 50 different data sources and a bunch of different versions of those data sources. A lot of the hard work around integrating with these are behind us. And quite frankly, we've got 2,000 deployments under our belt. You can trust us and leverage our expertise in order to help grow your revenues. I'll quickly talk about some of the work that we've done for Unico. So prior to working with Smarking, Unico relied on their parking operators' monthly reports to really understand how their facilities are doing. And they would spend a tremendous amount of time actually analyzing these reports in order to try to improve the way that their parking is managed. They found those reports to sort of be insufficient, and so they wound up deploying Smarking at a portfolio of assets where parking represented a decent chunk of that total NOI in order to get real-time insights into their operation, understand key metrics, and try to take actions to increase net operating income on a portfolio-wide basis. So we went into the deployment across 8 different assets with a goal of increasing net operating income across those 8 assets by more than $200,000. In our first year working with Unico, we wound up achieving a $260,000 increase in net operating income across the portfolio, which was a 40% beat relative to their goal. That was primarily done by increasing the oversell ratio associated with monthly parkers. Typically, data can be very, very helpful in making these decisions. We can track and measure the occupancy of a facility on a per tenant basis, which is going to help uncover more opportunities than sort of your manual count and total oversell methodology. They also didn't realize that a number of their garages benefited from event parking. Smarking can give you insights into sort of when and where event parking is impacting your facilities and making sure that you've got the right price necessary for those events. And with that, it looks like I've got about 10-ish minutes left. I figure I would just go ahead and show you what the software looks like. So yeah, the neat thing about Smarking is you can basically access the software anywhere where you have access to the internet, whether it be a mobile device, a phone, you're in the office, you're at home. Here's our demo account for Bruce Wayne, who's the owner of the Wayne campus and a bunch of facilities in Gotham City. You can see here we've got real-time occupancy across his portfolio. Folks are just starting to trickle back into work as shelter-in-place orders are lifted in Gotham, but occupancy is sort of still lower. Interestingly enough, we do see some pretty high occupancy in Gotham's on-street operation. One of the things that we've been seeing post-COVID across the US, generally speaking, the recovery is happening sort of faster and more earnestly in on-street operations than off. This is people sort of like picking up goods and services, restaurants and what have you. So we'll check in on Bruce's on-street operation in a little bit, but things can really get sliced and diced so that we can have things on a regional basis or what have you. Key statistics helps us understand sort of what's going on historically. So this is what happened yesterday at Bruce Wayne's parking operation. Things were down 83% versus our pre-pandemic in 2019. Those were better days. Like I said, right, it's if you rely on a parking operator's report to help understand what's going on, then we're going to wind up waiting too long. Either those opportunities won't be actionable. So Smarking gives you sort of just a click of the button. You're going to be able to understand exactly what's going on a month-to-date basis. So let's scroll through Bruce Wayne's portfolio here. And I'm always just curious, right, what is the most resilient asset in terms of revenue increases? So here we can see this on-street operation only down 49% relative to some of the 80s and the 90s that we've seen across some of these other assets. Interestingly enough, the Pavilion Center, which is an off-street facility in Gotham, is only down 83%. So of the garages, that seems to be the highest yielding. You can see here, we've actually got an increase in revenue per transaction. This is always interesting to me, might be indicative of a different type of parker leveraging the facility, perhaps like an essential worker or something along those lines. It looks like the Pavilion Center here is actually the most resilient garage. So let's go ahead and take a look at how that's doing and sort of better understand some of the dynamics that are driving this. Here we're diving into the individual location view. Here's our Pavilion Center, right? We've got our monthly parkers that are in facility and then our transients. Let's just go ahead and take a look at the revenue tab and sort of understand how things have gone on a year-to-date basis. So here's our daily revenues for year-to-date. If we toggle into, well, let's actually just take a look at this because this is pretty emblematic of what we've seen across the US as the pandemic hit. It was really sort of this mid-March area here where transaction volume started to drop off. Obviously, the month of April, Gotham was under shelter in place, very, very little activities, but we're starting to see signs of life. Good news is, for the most part, most of our clients have been seeing increasing parking revenues and transaction volumes since the week of April 6th. That was really the low, and we've been climbing sort of at an average of around 17% week over week since that bottom. So we see ourselves well on the way to recovery. Here is our weekly granularity, right? We can see that week of April 6th was really the low and that we're sort of starting to climb out. It'll be really interesting to see what this data shows. We did see sort of, right, what happened here at Pavilions, the small increase week over week was something that we saw across the US as some of the protests associated with George Floyd depressed business activity in downtown urban centers. And so everybody's got their eyes on the data this week around whether the increase in transaction volume will be continued. We can use this sort of granularity in talking about understanding where their opportunities are. You can see Bruce Wayne benefits from some hotel business at the Pavilion Center. That's been a little bit less resilient relative to the open lot, which has been available to essential workers. You can see here, right, from a staffing perspective, maybe it makes sense to be allocating some more staffing resources to the open lot as things ramp back up. Seems like that's really what's driving the revenue increase at pavilions. I do want to give folks here a sample of what an on-street operation looks like. You can see here the revenue growth at the on-street operation is a little bit stronger relative to what we're seeing in some of the off-street facilities. This is sort of in line with things that we see across our municipal clients, like in Santa Monica, Houston, Texas, and Miami. A lot of folks sort of gotten out and about and trying to go visit parks and what have you. Interestingly enough, some of the locations that we actually see up year over year are all parking locations that are near sort of parks or scenic activities. Some of the beach lots in the city of Santa Monica are doing very well, along with lots in Miami, Florida, near other outdoor attractions. So some interesting insights there, especially some of our clients in Vancouver are doing very well as their facilities are filled up with both construction workers and folks that are looking to get out of their house and head to a park or a hike or something along those lines. I do want to show one interesting insight that I think is going to be very relevant in a post-COVID-19 world, trying to understand occupancy associated with our individual monthly parking groups. So most of your gates and pay stations, we call them parking access and revenue control systems. So at Wayne Tower, Bruce Wayne has a number of different financial firms that occupy space in his garages. You can see it looks like Bank of America was the biggest tenant in a pre-COVID world. The B of A tenant would take up right around 650 spaces at peak times. Smarking can measure what the occupancy is associated with each individual tenant to help understand and make those oversell decisions on both on a per tenant basis, which is a very, very effective way to increase net operating income, but also give us insights into which tenants are using the facility and how often and are they coming back. A lot of our clients have actually started to leverage this data, not only from a parking management perspective, but actually from just a tenant insight perspective. As different folks ask for rent relief, there's a lot of anxiety around who's coming back, who's not. The sort of parking activity analysis is a leading indicator into sort of which of your tenants are actually using the building. You know, how has their behavior changed? It looks like B of A is starting to resume some of this normal business activity here in the last couple of weeks, and obviously this is going to be something that we watch over the next couple of weeks as more and more shelter-in-place orders lift. The last thing that I want to leave the team with here is an exciting development here in Smarking Land. We just released the first industry benchmark. So a lot of our clients want to better understand sort of how their parking operation stacks up against the competition. Here we can compare our transient revenues against a benchmark of more than 843 locations so that we can understand are our garages doing better or worse than our national average. Here's our daily view. Let's toggle that into weekly. It looks like at Wayne Tower, we can see that this was impacted by COVID sooner and a little bit more heavily than the national benchmark did. But we've had a couple of good weeks here whereby we've actually beat the benchmark and we can sort of see this climbing back. Let's take a look at a different facility and see if that has a different story. Dixon Dock is another one of Bruce's portfolios, and we can see here still that 64th percentile rank, a little bit better here. We're losing to the benchmark in May. Let's see how this does for the first week in June. Yeah, so wow, take a look at this. So Dixon Dock last week had a very, very good week. It looks like after shelter in place lifted, the national benchmark last week was down 100% versus the Dixon Dock benchmark only being down 70%. So that's great news for the asset owner. They're doing fantastic. We're excited to make the industry benchmark available free of cost to select partners.
And I just posted something in the Zoom webinar. You can receive 3 free month access of Smarking Business Intelligence Solutions. Thank you very much for your innovative product and all the best.
My pleasure, Ashkan. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.